First, a word about the Field and Garden Podcast. The Field and Garden Podcast is a part of the Gardener's Workshop. The Gardener's Workshop has been telling the stories and how-tos of growing, selling, and helping others to pursue their flower growing dreams for over 25 years. What began as one gardening enthusiast sharing her passion has grown into so much more. Over at thegardenersworkshop.com, find in print with our blogs and books and through our podcasts and videos and courses, and we have a shop full of the same tools, seeds, and supplies that you hear mentioned on our podcast. You can connect with all of these resources over at thegardenersworkshop.com. I hope you'll take some time to explore all we have for you. Welcome to the Field and Garden Podcast.
Welcome. Good morning. Good morning. Good midday if you're East Coast. Welcome. I am here hosting this Ask a Flower Farmer today on the Gardener's Workshop account. Thrilled to be doing this takeover. I always think takeover sounds a little hostile, so this is a gentle, friendly takeover. I have been invited. I have not hacked your airwaves. Oh, hi everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining. I'm Lennie Larkin, everyone. I am here today to answer questions about profitable flower farming and to talk about our new course with the Gardener's Workshop. So if you don't know me, my name is Lennie Larkin again. I have Flower Farming for Profit, which is my educational side of my business, and I also have B-Side Farm, which is a small cut flower farm. We started in California around 2013, 2014, and have since moved it to Oregon this past year. So we're up here in Oregon building our farm anew. Meanwhile, I just finished writing my first book, Flower Farming for Profit, which came out this year, and it's a business guide for flower farmers. So everything other than the growing of the plants, basically. So I'll tell you a bit about me and my course with the Gardener's Workshop and my background. So I started my farm, like I said, around 2013 in California, and within a few years of growing it, I really looked around and realized that I was just treading water. You know, I was working all the time, running myself into the ground, selling flowers every which way, wholesale to florists, wholesale to grocery, and distributors, and wedding flowers, and DIY wedding flowers, and CSAs. And I started to think there must be a way to make this business work and to actually build profit into the business, build some sort of wealth for myself. And by wealth, I just mean retirement plan, starting to think about how I could keep doing this work for the long term and then set myself up to not have to pivot into another career eventually, to be able to keep farming. And so I went outside of our industry to try to learn all these lessons about business and building small businesses, what works, what doesn't work. I came back, I applied all those things to my farm, and ta-da, it was magic, and I never looked back. No, just kidding. It was obviously hard work, but what I was able to do was to develop this strategic mindset and these business skills and bring them back to my farm and start making better decisions and start looking for ways to lead my farm towards financial sustainability. And then it's become my mission to help other flower farmers do that. So I've been teaching for years. I've been teaching long before I started farming. But now my whole life is really dedicated to helping other flower farmers build smart businesses around their farms, because it's more than just growing and selling great flowers, right? So I'm going to answer this first question, and then I will jump in and tell you guys more about the course. So let's see. Someone says, I know you've shared about tier-priced bouquets for people to see the perceived value. What besides larger did you find that drove up that value? So it's a great question. I'm going to unpack it a little bit, but basically, tier-priced bouquets. So I think they are referring to the fact that I talk a lot about price anchoring and different ways to offer different products or different bouquets at different price points and lead people to make a bigger purchase. I think that's what this person is referring to. So besides just making bigger bouquets, I think it's crucial that you're learning design skills, and this doesn't mean you need to learn how to make amazing wedding centerpieces or bridal bouquets if you're just selling out of a farm stand. But even your market bouquets, if you want to charge a lot for those bouquets, you're going to be needing to make sure the bouquets are structurally sound, that the flowers are conditioned well. You know, I know this is something that Lisa and Dave talk about all the time, and Ellen too, all of the Gardener's Workshop teachers, but that those flowers are really cut at the right time, conditioned well, cut at their prime, and then worked into bouquets with some idea of principles of design worked into those bouquets with them. So it can't just be all snapdragons or all filler if you're looking to really charge a pretty penny for your flowers. And I talk a lot about flower markups and how, you know, if you're selling flowers wholesale for $10 a bunch to a florist, you might be marking those up 2 times, so to $20 to sell through your farm stand, or 5 times to $50 for a full service wedding, somewhere in that range. But with that markup comes responsibility. I've never put it that way before, but that seems right. With those markups comes responsibility. It's your responsibility to learn some design skills, to learn how to get that perceived value across. So if you're trying to get more money for your flowers and do that markup, it's got to be visually appealing. It's got to seem like it's worth the customer's dollars, right? And also it's got to stand apart from something they'd find at the grocery store. I like to really think about elevated color palettes, even in my farm stand and farmer's market bouquets. So I treat each bucket of bouquets, which is usually like 3 or 4 bouquets for me, as if they were one wedding palette. So here I'm going to make, you know, enough blue and white bouquets to fill a bucket or 2. And then when I run out of those ingredients, I'll move to the next ingredients and make yellow and white bouquets or something. But so rather than having a hodgepodge of all different colors, all different styles, you're having discrete, specific color schemes in each bouquet. And then also just kind of branding and thinking about your brand. And it doesn't need to be the fanciest thing in the world, but it needs to be something people identify with. So those are great ways of setting yourself apart and having different tiers of bouquets, which I think was the question. Let's see what the next one is. You guys should see my tripod today. It is a milk crate, and then a pillow, and then a lampshade, and then some socks, and then my phone, just to be honest with you there. All right, I'm looking for the next question here. So, ooh, these are great questions. So this one is, are there major lessons from your old farm that you're incorporating into the layout of your new farm? Great question. Yeah, it's been a really hard move. And it's one that I don't talk about that often because I'm still in it. You know, I heard someone recently on a podcast saying that they only talk about lessons they've learned once they've scarred over. And I thought that that was so apt because it's been a really challenging move. You know, we built this farm and this business back in California over the course of 10 years. And now moving up to Oregon, it's not just being on the new land, because I've done that before. I've built new fields many times because I was always leasing until now. So I know what it takes to lease a field and to move a field when the lease runs out or things go south with the landlord, whatever it is, you run out of water, whatever it is. But the bigger challenge for us is establishing the new market. So I moved up here thinking, okay, I want to do a similar retail model to what I had eventually developed in California. But looking around, that might not be the best model up here. So I think one of the real lessons I've learned, of course, I'm taking so much that I learned from building my farm the first time to this new property, but I'm also trying so hard to kind of humble myself and take all these business lessons to heart that I talk about with my students in my courses and that I talk about in my book. And one of them is, of course, researching your market. And everyone says this, everyone pays lip service to this. So everyone building a business or a farm now knows that you're supposed to research your market. But what does that really mean? It means, what are the prices that people are willing to pay? What do people value in the local area? Where do they get information? Where do they congregate? What would they be splurging on if it wasn't flowers? All these things. And as I start to look around at the retail market and also the wholesale market up here, I'm realizing that I can probably build a pretty good business selling wholesale flowers. The farmers up here are amazing. We are selling at the wholesale market. There's a great sense of camaraderie. And people are talking more and more about, you know, how to specialize, how to distinguish yourself other than just by the different little microclimates. So sometimes my snapdragons might come on more quickly than someone else's snapdragons an hour away, but we're selling at the same market. So that means I get those early sales and they get the late sales. But how else can we kind of diversify? So being the new guy in the market, I'm kind of sitting back right now and seeing what everyone else is growing, what they grow really well, what their customers seem to really want and need. And then I should be starting to think, well, what else can I add into that equation? How can I distinguish myself? So I wanted to tell you guys more about the course too, which just opened yesterday, I believe. So it's called Profitable Flower Farming. And it's sort of a bite-sized course within the Gardener's Workshop courses. And it's an on-demand course. When you buy it, you can have access to the whole course right away. We really focus on what I've learned to be the key things flower farms need to do in order to become smart, sustainable, profitable businesses. So that goes from researching your market, like I was just talking about. I'd actually didn't mean to cue that up like this, but I did, so that's brilliant. So researching your market, seeing what your market really needs, thinking about your sales channels. Who are you going to sell to? Who are the people who are clamoring for your flowers or will be clamoring for your flowers? How can you focus on them and what they need? How do you find them? How do you do that research? And then how to pick the sales channels that complement one another so that you're not trying to sell to everyone at every level, because a wedding customer takes a lot of it, not just more work than a wholesale customer, but a different kind of work and a different kind of relationship. So how do you balance selling to, doing full service weddings and selling to grocery, for example? How do you think about the different sales channels that you might cobble together in order to make a business, and think about how they work together or could be harming one another? So how do you just think through that and start to put together a plan for your business? The next thing is crops. So how do you start choosing what crops to grow? And we all know that there are smarter ways of developing your crop plan rather than just thinking, what do I love growing? What do I love looking at, right? So this course really aims to have you flip it around and start from a place of what do your customers need? What do they want? What kinds of flowers do wedding florists like to use? What are the different categories and what are the criteria? So we all know that wedding flowers don't need to have a long vase life, for example, but a lot of wedding flowers are, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say there's other characteristics of flowers that wedding florists might look for. One is flowers that hold up out of water. Of course, a lot of wedding flowers are in water, but there's so much arch and installation work done these days that flowers that can hold up out of water, like Lysianthus, like Elaeagnus, just to name a few of my favorite flowers I used to use when I was doing lots of weddings. But these flowers that are prized for their ability to hold up out of water, whereas the vase life isn't really that important for those customers. So before I go down a hole here, just reiterating that different customer types will look for different traits in cut flowers. So how can you look at those traits and start thinking about all the different crops out there that are available to grow and think, okay, based on who I want to sell to, what kinds of flowers do I need to start growing? So it has you really take a deep dive into crops and crop planning. And crop planning is the next big piece of it too. So we're looking at how to choose what crops to grow and how many of them to grow based on your sales goal. So if you haven't done this before, I love doing this process. And again, it's kind of flipping crop planning on its head. Rather than saying, I want to grow a bunch of sunflowers this year, so I'm going to plant them in 4 successions, and I'm going to plant one bed at a time because, I don't know, that seems like a good unit, and we'll see how many flowers I come up with and when they bloom. Don't do that. Rather than doing that, we're going to say, okay, I think between my farmer's market and my florist sales, I think I could sell 10 bunches of sunflowers every week throughout the season. Okay, so then in order to have 10 bunches blooming each week, how many do I need to plant and when do I need to plant them? So it's working backwards from those sales goals, and I'll help you come up with those sales goals. And then we really drill into crop cost of production. So how to start thinking about which crops are taking more of your time and money and which ones are taking less of that and therefore more profitable for you to grow. And you guys, those of you who know me, some of you know that crop cost of production is everything to me. I've been doing a lot of grant-funded research, pulling together different flower farmers and running them through these cohorts where they study crop cost of production and are able to then look back and say, okay, would I be better off growing Lysianthus or sunflowers? How much better does this crop do for me than this other crop? and so on and so forth. And the last piece, and then I see a few questions have come in, I'll get to them in 1 second. The last piece of the course is strategic thinking. So how to empower yourself and how we can empower you in this course to learn how to make good decisions, because you're a business owner in addition to a gardener and a farmer, right? So there are new sales opportunities coming at you all the time. There will be eventually, I promise you. And there's just different decisions you need to make. And when we're too burned out and busy and spend all our time weeding to have the bandwidth to make good decisions and make good choices, we're just running in circles and not being strategic and building a sustainable business. So my goal is to really help people build a strategic mindset through this course. Let's see what the next question is here. Okay. This is a good question here. They're all good questions. How would you go about researching a new market? Top 3 or 4 things to understand the gaps, opportunities. So, again, this is a tricky thing. I'm absolutely going to answer this. It's tricky because when people throw this term around, all sorts of business coaches talk about researching the market, but it's rarely followed through on how to actually do that. And the reason is that it's an easy thing to pay lip service to and a hard, long process to actually go through. And there's no magic bullet. So I think people tell you to do it, but they don't tell you how. And it's not because they're hiding anything. It's because there's no magic bullet. And so I suggest that you all start dipping your toes into this. I said it's a long, hard process. That's true, but just beginning to do it is worthwhile and you'll learn a lot. So first of all, just trying to take a fresh set of eyes to the area where you live. Most of us are not building farms in places where they just moved. So that's my experience, but of course that's not what I'm going to focus on. Most of you are starting farms where you've been living for a long time, right? So I think it's time to take a step back and just pretend that you are visiting your area, writing a report, writing like a 5th grade report, and what the industries and the population and the trends are in your local area. So, first of all, of course, are you urban? Are you suburban? Are you rural? Do you live in a high destination wedding area like I used to live? Or do you live somewhere that people would never travel for fun, right? Where do people congregate and get their information? So if you're in a small town in the middle of nowhere, chances are everyone knows each other, right? So word of mouth goes a really long way. How can you capitalize on that would be the next step, the next question. How can you capitalize on that word of mouth and start letting everyone you know that you're building a flower business so that you can start building these little ambassadors just within the people you know and the people they know, right? Is there a big community around churches in your area, around schools? Do people chat at school pickup and drop off? Do people chat on the sports fields? Just starting to really think through where people spend their time. And then the next step is where people spend their money. If people were to get flowers, where do they get them now? Is it at the supermarket? If people have extra money, where are they spending it? How do people practice self-care in your area? For a lot of us, there's so many flower farmers look like every kind of person out there, right? But there's a lot of flower farmers who are in that like 30 years old to 40 years old category. That's younger than me. But in that case, I suspect that a lot of you building your farms, you sort of are your ideal customer. So you can think about where you spend time, where you spend money. It's kind of an easy out. And of course, we're not always our perfect ideal customer. But so the biggest piece of advice I would give, again, circling back to the question of how to research your market, is to just take it with a fresh set of eyes. And I get a lot of people saying, they feel they're facing an uphill battle building their business because they do live so remotely. But I would say, you need to start leaning into the strengths of your area and the strength of your connection with people in your area. So you can really build a business just based on word of mouth. If you have 10 friends and you're letting them know exactly what you're doing, how you're building your farm, what your guiding principles are, what your crops are going to be, and then how people can buy your flowers, if each of those friends tells 5 people, and each of those people tells 5 people, a farm business can really be built on this word of mouth. I didn't have that. I was pretty new to my area in Sonoma County when I first moved there, so I had no word of mouth to really build on. So I did it just the long haul. But I think if you're, deep in a community already, you can kind of have a leg up with building a business based on word of mouth. The only thing I need to kind of warn you on there is asserting boundaries when you are starting out selling to friends and family and friends of friends, because it's easy to feel like you're getting walked all over, and it's easy to feel like people are taking advantage of you. And so you just need to put up boundaries from the start and realize that all your friends and family, they're getting paid for their work, and you should get paid for your work too. Let's see what another question is here. Okay, let's see here. All right, this is a great question. So, when it comes to lower valued flowers, which ones do you feel make the most impact? Interesting. Okay, so lower valued flowers. So flowers that, let's say, the retail customer isn't like gonna think that they would spend tons of money on. So something like a sunflower rather than a garden rose, right? So which ones do you feel make the most impact? I'm gonna say it's all about the combination of the flowers that you're growing and putting together in bouquets in order to make a bigger impact. Not everyone is making bouquets, but I know a lot of people just starting or building a business on the side are probably starting with farmers markets and CSAs and farm stands. And I think that's who I'm mostly talking to here. So I'm going to focus on people who do sell bouquets for retail markets. So I don't think it's necessarily, like, ooh, this feverfew is going to make the most impact on its own, or this sunflower, but it's the combination of elements. So it's sort of about those principles of design. How can you make bouquets that look big, that look beautiful, that look full? And if you're doing that with flowers that have a lower perceived value, like everyday common flowers, I think the color scheme, the shape, and the texture and the rest of the branding that goes along with the bouquets is key. I'm sort of repeating myself from what I said earlier. I don't mean to do that, but I've seen some questions recently on forums of like, how do you charge so much for bouquets? I can't get my bouquets to sell for over $10. And I would never ever criticize another flower farmer's bouquet, but I would say I really want you to think about the design of the bouquet and how you can start to elevate it a little bit. How you can have foliage that is beautiful in its own right, but that also takes up a fair amount of space in the bouquet. That's something I really missed out on when I first started my own flower farming business. I had all filler flowers with spindly stems, but I had nothing that was like branchy and took up space. And it's going to take a lot of spindly flowers to make a full bouquet, right? But if you're using things like raspberry greens and eucalyptus that's branching, yarrow, hydrangeas, things that just fill out empty space, you're halfway there. Then some focal flowers that have larger heads, some flowers that have smaller heads, and hopefully some sort of a line or a spike flower that's going to kind of add some interest to that bouquet. I love, love, love making bouquets with just like 3 ingredients. To me, that's beautiful. You don't have to you don't have to make everything so complicated, but you do need to have flowers that are different sizes, different shapes. They're all showing up in the bouquet with their own space. They're not crowded. And then also how you wrap the bouquet is pretty important too. I like to wrap so that I use craft paper so that the bottom is really snug, but the top is really loose so that the bouquet can like shine and fill up space and look bigger than it is. Okay, let's see. So I didn't read this question before I clicked on it, but if farming is someone's main interest, do you have advice on how to learn enough about floral design without being a florist as well? Yeah, that's a great question. I love thinking about this design stuff. And the thing I didn't, this course of course doesn't go deep into design, but it's such a crucial part. And I would say also the 2 things that are really going to help you build a robust, profitable bouquet program, no matter where you're selling them, is the design and then also the efficiency. So you're thinking about how to build beautiful bouquets, but also how to do them quickly, essentially. Like I was looking at a picture the other day, maybe I'll post it because I just downloaded this picture from my computer because I saw it. It's from like 2014. And it's 20 bouquets that I made to send down to a fancy supermarket in San Francisco called Buy Right. I shouldn't even say supermarket. It's like a, bougie corner store. It's beautiful and everything there is delicious and $100. So I would sell these bouquets. At the time I was selling them for like $7 or $7.50, and they would mark them up to 2 times that. So $16. And they were so big and beautiful. But I remember making these bouquets in the cooler, because I thought the flowers couldn't come out of the cooler or else they would die. And I think I spent like half an hour on each bouquet. You guys, half an hour for a bouquet that I was selling for $7. Throughout the years, we learned to get more efficient and use those principles of design almost as second nature, but be quick and make a 30-second bouquet. And, you know, sometimes up to bouquets might end up taking like 2 minutes, 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes once you take all the time that we would spend getting the flowers out of the cooler, setting them on the tables, blah, blah, blah. If we took all that time and kind of averaged it out, the bouquets probably take more like 2 minutes. But 30-second bouquet with the ingredients on the table, putting them in your hand, rubber banding them, putting the paper on that, setting it in a bucket. So back to the question, if someone is mainly interested in farming and not necessarily becoming a florist, how do you get like enough of the skills of design, of floristry, in order to take your bouquets to the next level? So I would recommend, I don't think everyone needs to take a course for everything they're doing, but I have taken a few courses that I really loved. I would search around with simple bouquet tutorials. This stuff wasn't really like on YouTube when I started flower farming. I don't think I knew about YouTube, but now there's great stuff out there. And I would watch some videos, and I would watch a video. It doesn't really matter who it is. If it's someone you like their arrangements, watch their video and take some flowers in your hands, have some flowers as you're watching the video, and try to kind of recreate what they're doing. I love doing that. I used to do that all the time with bridal bouquets. So I also would make sure that you are having flowers of different categories. I would make sure you have 1 or 2 greeneries, right? Foliages, hopefully they have different characteristics. I like thinking about having 1 foliage in each bouquet that's pretty like broad-leafed, like raspberry. And then if I was going to have a secondary one, maybe something with a different leaf shape, like a fine eucalyptus or buplorum or something, right? Then again, I would go think about the focal flowers. So I want to have 1 flower that stands out, usually has a bigger head size. This is your ranunculus, your rose, your sunflower, your zinnia, right? Something with a big head that's going to stand out. And then something that's a filler, that's going to take up a little bit more space, add a little bit more color, a little texture. And then something that's either a line flower or like a sparkle, some people will call it, that is going to draw interest into the bouquet, add a little bit of glimmer and shine, and really stand out. So as I got really elevated with color palettes, I would just be making a bouquet with raspberry, dahlias, and geum or something like that. So I don't have all the categories, but I have the broadleaf foliage, I have the focal flower, and I have something that is a line or a glimmer, right? Or a geum, it like sparkles, it dances outside of the bouquet. So think about the different categories of flowers and think about the color scheme. I don't want bouquets that are every color of the rainbow. I want you to focus on 1 color scheme with each bouquet. And hopefully you can have, as you build your business, a few buckets of each color scheme. So I'm going to sign off here in a second, but thank you guys for joining me today. We talked a fair amount about design, but of course I'm here to talk about the course Profitable Flower Farming that we have with the Gardener's Workshop. It's basically a really digestible business course for people who have never thought about business before. That's not the tagline for the course, but it's how to start thinking about building the business behind the farm so that you can keep farming forever. And I'm so thrilled to be doing it with the Gardener's Workshop. And thank you guys for being here this morning. This is really fun. I love seeing you all. So go ahead, and if you don't follow me, I'm at Flower Farming for Profit. Flower Farming for Profit. I would love to see you over there, and I'll see you all soon. All right, bye everyone.